Okay, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 191 with my guest, Matt Timman. Matt was a former Soci student from from 2013 is when he was there, 2012 or 13. Matt has been somebody who's very forthright about issues with mental health and depression and anxiety. And I really wanted to talk with Matt because I deal with some of those issues myself. And it was nice to catch up with Matt and see what he's working on now. He now works for VIP Kid out of China. And he's teaching from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. every day. And it was just really great to catch up with Matt. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I certainly did. Without further ado, this is Matt Timman. Enjoy. Bye. Well, let's gavel this to order. Matt Timman, I appreciate you doing this. I am very grateful that, we are connected today because you reached out after I put something on Facebook, just sort of not like a call for scores or anything, but just like who wants to talk about stuff. Like I think I generally, if you see posts like that from me, that means I've had generally a terrible day, and I think I overreact to comment threads, and I just am like, screw it, I want to talk to people, I hate comment threads. And I appreciate you reaching out. And I'm just, you came to Soci. What year were you at Soci?
2013.
2013. All right.
Yeah.
And that's just long enough ago that I think I can admit something to you, that even though you were technically a student of ours at Soci, like we were young enough where like we just couldn't believe that anybody got in the room with us to do anything. And because we weren't that much older than all of you, and it was like now I could look at you, you're like an adult human with like a job, and you have a career, and you're like working and doing things. And anyway, just to say, like, I'm gonna just assume that Matt Timman we met then might have been a completely different person, and I want to talk to you about sort
Yeah.
of your journey since then. I mean, is there anything in particular? I have some questions for you. Like, I see your background, and I know that you teach in Beijing. Well, you're not in Beijing, but you teach remotely, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about how you got into that, but I'm curious what you wanted to talk about today. Is there anything in particular on your mind that you want to chew the fat on?
Uh, I don't know. You mentioned talking about just like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health is something that I try to be pretty open about. And I think it's important that we be open about, especially in music. Um, there, the music community is a pretty open community, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely still run into stigma about mental health, especially as most of my performing is uh, is orchestral playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like I, I love the orchestral percussion community, but I still feel like compared to other areas, it's still much more closed off as
Mm.
far as what we do and don't talk about.
Do
You
you want to
know,
elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, I think I agree. I have my own thoughts. It's based on my own experience. That again, my experiences aren't proof that anything is a certain way. It's just my own personal experience with something, and then
yeah.
trying to tease out like what are the like. I love orchestra playing, like playing Mahler 2 when I was in grad school. Good night, Irene. Like I'm happy to just sign off and be like, good to go. Played bass drum with an organ and a massive thing with a choir. Like it was totally great. But to me, the path to orchestra playing was always the thing that was the roadblock for me. And I'm curious for you,
Yeah.
like why do you see things the way you do with the orchestra world?
Uh, I mean, you know, the pandemic has been obviously negative in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and one of the things that it did force me to do is because, like, before the pandemic, like, all of my income was from freelancing. Uh, like, I play, um, before the pandemic, I live here in Tucson,
Mm-hmm.
and I sub with the symphony here,
Mm-hmm.
and like I sub with the opera in Phoenix, and I play with Flagstaff Symphony and Sierra Vista Symphony, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm principal of an orchestra in Northern California and section with an orchestra in Southern Oregon. And I think that says a lot about what like this has become. Is like I was running myself ragged. Like I did things that I realize having like a year of time in between it,
Hmm.
I probably shouldn't have been doing. Like I I drove one time in a snowstorm overnight from a concert in Flagstaff to a rehearsal in Northern California because like I felt it's been instilled in me so much that like I have to, I gotta grind, I gotta go, I gotta do whatever it takes.
Hmm.
But that's not really healthy.
Well, I mean, I didn't have exactly that path, but like I know what the grind is. And my particular grind, like I did a lot of freelance stuff when I was in college and a little bit when I graduated. I joined right out of grad school, so my particular situation, I was very fortunate to have been sort of plucked out of the track that I think a lot of people have to stay in, which is the orchestra job world or the college teaching route. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a music ed major, and even though my teacher Larry Snyder, he was very supportive, but the overall culture at the school was one of like not just even at Akron, but just in the larger higher ed world in general, is like college orchestra or solo playing. Oh,
Yeah.
you want to teach high school? Well, why would you want to do that? Or you want to teach elementary school? Like, why would you want to do that? And I always felt to myself like, don't those people need the best teaching? Like, why are we why are we putting all the focus on the college kids? They're basically those cakes are baked already for the most
Yeah.
part. You know, like shouldn't we be talking to fifth graders about John Cage and Steve Reich and Caroline Shaw and Su Yun Leah and like all of these people that are in my like let's talk to them because that means in 20 years college education is going to look way different.
Yeah.
But there's certain grooves I think that you can get in, and I'm empathizing with your grind. I mean, for you, like when you because the grind for stopped pretty abruptly a year ago as well. Like it was like we were touring, and the last thing we did was in France. I remember flying back, and I got puked on by some kid behind me who was like 19 years old, had never flown internationally, and was getting
Oh God.
free wine the whole time. And was like, "Well, this is great. I can drink for free." And he just puked all over me, and I was like, "Coronavirus is becoming a thing. I just got vomited on an international flight. Like how
Oh,
this is ridiculous." And I get home, and then it's just like game over, right?
yeah.
For you, I mean, the grind sucks, but like what are you not going to return to when you come like if and ever things ever return to some normalcy? Like for you, what are the things that you learned like, "Oh, that's I don't want to do that anymore."
I think that it's um it, saying no to some things.
Mm-hmm.
Um like I uh this whole thing, you can see my wonderful closet. Uh this wasn't like it's been something that's rolling around in the back of my head for years. Just because like I went to high school and then actually worked with at I worked in retail pharmacy for like
Mm.
10 years,
I didn't know that.
um between like or 7 years, all of my undergrad and all of grad school.
Mm.
And I worked with a guy I went to high school with, who we both went to the same undergrad. He got a double degree in
Mm-hmm.
sociology
Mm-hmm.
and English, and then he did a master's degree in education. And after he was done, he got a job teaching English as a second language in South Korea, and he was gone.
Mm.
Um, and he lived in South Korea for, I think, maybe 5 years, teaching English. And we didn't really talk that much, but like everything that I saw from him, that like one, he was happy with like what he was doing,
Mm.
and two, um, I think that the kids seemed very appreciative of
Mm-hmm.
him being there.
Mm.
Um, and it was something that it seemed like he was enjoying himself and also doing something that was having a positive impact.
Mm.
Um, and that was something that kind of rolled around in the back of my head, um, for a long time, as like, if I need to not play, or if this just becomes untenable,
Mm-hmm.
then this is something to look at. And the pandemic kind of forced my hand.
Mm.
um, uh, like I did a certification, a certificate for teaching English as a foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
I did it all online through the University of Arizona.
Mm.
Um, while I was unemployed, while I was on unemployment, and then I finished it at the. This just makes me think that the world is a very weird place because, like, I finished it at the end of November or beginning of December,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the way that I finished it, like, I didn't pass my final portfolio the first time, and um, I actually posted in a Facebook group for a podcast that I listened to, a movie
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and a guy who teaches English in Quebec like helped me with my
Mm.
materials
Mm.
to get that done. But like I finished that at the end of the year, and I started teaching. I teach for VIP Kid, that is a Beijing based company,
Mm-hmm.
and I started doing that in January. Um, so I've been doing
And
that
that's
for
like,
like
and you're teaching at like, you said prior to sort of gaveling this order that you were teaching from 1 to 6 a.m.
yeah. It's it works on, because we're independent contractors. It works on a booking system.
Mm-hmm.
So like they book classes, and you're trying to, you know, um, cultivate a following of students so that you just have regular bookings all the
Got
time.
it. Got it. Okay.
Um, I'm getting towards that direction. I think that I have like 10 regular students so far, which I guess is pretty good. Um, but yeah, it means that my schedule isn't regular,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually I'll get up, I'll go to sleep at like 9 and then wake up at midnight and then teach for 5 hours or so and then go back to sleep. So
Oh my
it's
God. That's that. I mean, that as somebody, like I'm, the older I get, the more I know. Like in the morning, I can wake up and be like, today's gonna be a good day. Like I know when my, like I know that, like, okay, I just need to have coffee for the next 2 hours and read the news, and then I'm gonna be super productive from 11 to 3. Like I just know that about myself when I wake up in the morning. I can never imagine being productive from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. and having to do that. And I'm always like, what I love, my favorite part of your, like, if I was gonna, like, I'm sort of being like a peeping tom on your career just on Facebook, and like I love seeing you like with a cup of coffee and being like, well, students 4 minute late made a tune,
oh yeah,
like
my
like
my
holding your massive cup of coffee, and it's like 3 a.m. is the timestamp. I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm just sort of out like a light watching, World War II documentaries at that time.
I don't know, like part of it is that it's different when I have, like, I think my oldest student I've had is 15,
Hmm.
and that's kind of a different thing. That's just more of like conversation. It's
Hmm.
more of them talking, less of me talking.
Hmm.
Um but like the little kids, like it's almost impossible not to be like you got to have your energy up. I remember like the first day that I was teaching, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I go through the same spiel like every class. If it's a new student, it's like,
Hmm.
my name is teacher Matt, what is your name? And they'll tell me. I'm like, how old are you? um and I remember like one of the first kids was like, I was like, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 5 years old. I'm like, cool. And he's like, how old are you? I'm like, uh 32. And he's like, okay.
He just
And
wanted to
another
know
kid,
if he just wanted to set up the sort of like, if you
yeah,
can ask me questions, I can ask you questions too.
yeah. I the same day I had a kid who I was like, I was going through the spiel, and I'm like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 6. I'm like, cool. And he's like, are you a dad? And I was like, what? And he's like, are you a dad? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay. Like,
I love the sort of like the thought. This is like I think if percussion just dissipated tomorrow, I would get recertified in education and go teach fifth and sixth grade band, because they were the kids like that age group. They all at once, the like the answer that's in their head is just like, well, this is the answer, you know. But like
yeah,
if you tell them they're wrong, they're like, okay, like and just like the asking questions, fifth graders. I'm curious, just culturally, is this a thing only in the United States, or is it sort of grafted onto every other culture when they're that age? Is like you're like, how, what did you all think of that piece? They all raise their hand. You pick on one. He's like, my dad has a red shirt. You know,
oh,
you're like, my dad
it's
has a guitar with three strings. You're like, you answered a question with an answer to you that was absolutely spot on, but I think you heard a different question.
yeah, it's that's just it's kids
Okay,
from
all right.
like no, like um, I I had a new student last night, and I'm always a little bit um off when it's a new student because like I don't. Besides the things of like I don't know what their personality is going to be like,
Mhm,
it's also like I have to think about like my talking speed. Like I don't know if what their level is, so maybe I need to speak slower, and
mhm,
maybe I can speak faster. Whatever. Um, maybe they understand, sentence frames that I can ask them like, "What is this? What is the difference between?" And maybe they can't.
mhm,
But I had this kid, and he was obviously like he understood what I was talking about. We're just kind of booking along, and at one point he like grinds everything to a stop because he's wants to know how old are you? I'm like, I'm 32. Do you have any siblings? I'm like, yeah. Oh, how big is your family? And then like he's asking me all these questions, and then he like turns to his mom and asks her how old she is. And he's like, my mom is 37. I'm like, cool. And he goes, I like you. Like,
yeah, it's just like he's got a list of things, and he's like, if teacher Matt can work through these with me, we're cool. Like,
yeah, he's got some demands.
yeah, well, that's good. I think as a student, it's okay to know where your lines in the sand are, and
Yeah.
you know, no matter how trivial they may seem to you, it's okay to sort of be like, we're gonna meet in the middle on this. Like, what I don't want to sort of belabor the mental health thing, but I'm curious for you, like in the pandemic, what this is another time when I think we as a society, like, you know, we talk about mental health as being this thing that kind of is like we should be more thoughtful about it, and we should be open about it and talk about it and not stigmatize. And that's easy to say for people who have never experienced it prior to COVID. And I
Mm.
think everybody experiences some sort of mental illness, whether they know it or not. That's what's happening. I think everybody's on a spectrum somewhere there. But the pandemic, I'm fairly confident, is the first time for humanity, for everybody who's alive now, where we all have experienced the same trauma, not the same level. You know, some of us have gotten
Yeah.
sick, some of us haven't, some have lost people, some of us haven't, but we've all been forced inside. We've all had to wear masks at the grocery store and feel like you're going to get sick and die, and like we've all read the news. So in a sense, it's like, welcome to the club, everybody. This is what depression feels like. Honest to God, like
Yeah.
in May and June, like for me, when like a friend of ours lost their son, not to COVID but to something else, and I was like, that was about as low as I've been, bro. Like, so percussion wasn't working that much. We were all on Zoom all the time. All of a sudden, I was just sort of like I was flabbergasted that everybody else was having such a hard time, and then for me personally, just coupling that on top of the already crushing anxiety I feel just to get out of bed in the morning. Like, I'm curious for you, like, what is anything I'm saying like remotely on base here, or
Uh,
am I alone here?
um, I, um, I have a very, very long history of like mental health problems.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to, I don't know, like I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Like I started having anxiety attacks when I was like, I don't know, 7 years old,
Mm,
8 years
mm-hmm,
old.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I didn't have a diagnosis until I was in my undergrad. It
mm,
was like, I guess 12 years ago, 13 years ago now.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or, um, and I've kind of been on and off medication ever since. The pandemic, however, presented me with how you're talking about like everyone is kind of doing this shared trauma now, and we're all kind of dealing with mental health problems in different ways. Because I already had a pretty high baseline of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and depression issues. Um, that's when it decided to just go full tilt. Um, because uh, besides the pandemic, like I suddenly lost all income
Mm-hmm.
completely,
Mm-hmm.
and because of how none of us were prepared for this, I didn't get on unemployment until I don't know 3 months in, 4 months in,
Mm-hmm.
because like nothing was working. So uh, it was I think in May, April or May, like I've I think that there's a medical not much of a medical difference between like anxiety and panic attacks. I'm not really sure. I've
Yeah,
talked to my psychiatrist about it.
I'm not sure
Um,
either, and like I'm curious for you when you say you have an anxiety attack, like how specifically? Because this is the other thing, it's different for everybody. Like
yeah.
how does it manifest for you when you say anxiety or an anxiety attack? Like how does that manifest for you?
Uh, when I'm talking about my anxiety attacks, I'm thinking about things that have triggers. Um, I know I have one very specific trigger, and which is dying.
Hi
So
Matt, have we met? I think me too, bro. That's all I'm talking to my therapist about
yeah.
is like, why am I afraid of dying? It's like, well, you shouldn't be
Um,
because it's gonna happen, you know.
and it's uh like my wife doesn't have any history of anxiety
Hmm.
or I mean, she has anxieties, but not like there's something wrong with my brain kind of thing,
Hmm.
right? And I always try to tell her um like my anxiety attacks are like if I know if I know the trigger is there but I'm not thinking about it, it's like a closed door,
Hmm.
and I know that the door is there but I'm not looking at it, and kind of like if I'm kind of on edge, like I'm looking at the door but it's not open, and if it's like it's go time, like the door is open, I'm aware of what's going on, and like I start getting to like the fight or flight response,
Hmm.
because my brain is just whirling and can't stop thinking about this idea, and eventually it will turn into an actual thing where I get the hit of adrenaline and start freaking out.
I love that you use. I love the analogy of the door being open because, like, as you were saying it, it's like, oh, I have my own too. Like for me,
Yeah,
I remember seeing. Do you remember? I think it was like 2000, 2005. There was the tsunami in Thailand, in Jakarta,
yeah,
and I remember seeing videos of that particular, like, of a tsunami. Like the ocean recedes, right? It goes
yeah,
away, and like the ocean is like one of the scariest things in the world to me. I don't know if that says I have a fear of my mother, but like like there's the ocean is a very like that's an intense thing, right? And there's a lot of sort of psychological symbolism that I think people put on that, right? But then like people walked out
yeah,
like the seabed, and I was just like, no, 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 no. Like, and for me, when I have anxiety, to me, it's like this weird relief coupled with I know with what's coming. Like for me, it's like I'm sitting on a beach, everything's great, and then I look up and the ocean's gone. I've been reading my book for an hour, and I look up, the ocean's gone, and it's all at once like, oh, thank God that thing's gone. But then I see people walking out, and like that for me is the like, I got to get out of here. Like there's just something, and it's not real. Like there's not a real
right,
danger. That's the thing with anxiety. It's like there's nobody really on the other side of that door. It's just your brain. And this is an evolutionary thing. I mean, this is what has kept human beings alive. The fear of getting stomped by a woolly mammoth, the fear of dying because of attack from the neighboring village, the fear of, somebody has a common cold, walks into your village, 15, 20 people die. Like, you don't know why. Now all of a sudden you're afraid of everyone who's wearing that exact headdress that person was wearing. Like, that's anxiety,
Yeah.
and that stuff is an evolutionary sort of thing in our brains that helps us run from fear. Except we don't need it that much anymore. Yet it's
Yeah.
still there, just being like, come on, Matt, we gotta go. There's some shit on the other side of that door. And you're
Yeah.
like, I'm just talking about ESL, some kids in Beijing right now. Leave me alone. Like, that's.
Yeah. I what happened in April for me though was like the rules went out the window.
Yeah.
And I guess that uh when I've talked to my psychiatrist about this, she's like, this is more associated with like full blown panic disorder,
Hmm.
where there isn't a trigger anymore. Like it can just I was the first time this ever happened, I was just sitting at our kitchen table. My wife had already gone to sleep, and I'm just like sitting at my computer, like eating something and like watching a video on YouTube, and all of a sudden it was just like full blown
Hmm.
adrenaline. Like my heart started racing, and it just kept on coming. It kept on coming, kept on coming, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was dying,
Hmm. Hmm.
and like my pulse kept on getting higher and higher and higher, and like I woke up my wife and I'm like, you have to call the ambulance. You have to call the ambulance. I'm like, and like we had the fire department came out. It's COVID, very early COVID, so like firefighters are like very hesitant about
Hmm.
talking to me or doing anything. But they're just like, your heart's fine. I'm like, okay. And they're like, you could go to the hospital, but like, we don't think that's a good idea.
Hmm.
Like, since your heart's okay. I'm like, all right. And like, that's when I found out from them, like, this was like a full blown, like, panic attack.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually spent maybe a month, 2 months where like, I was no longer afraid of dying. I was afraid of having another panic attack,
Hmm.
where like that was my main fear,
Hmm.
because I had, you said about like none of the anxieties are like not actively going to hurt you right now, like, but this, like, that was replaced by something like was actively hurting me right now.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to be flippant about that, but what I mean is that, like,
No,
it's
no, I
legitimate to
didn't.
be
I didn't think you
no,
were.
no, no. But it's like just for somebody who else is listening, and like for me, that's the thing is like, if there's let's say there's a real size bear outside my house, that's a legitimate reason to have your heart rate up
Yeah,
because it's going to try to. I mean, it's a thing that's in real time happening right there. My panic attacks, when I have them, I feel like my heart is burping. Like, it doesn't race real fast. It just feels like my heart takes like boop, and it like does this weird, like, and it feels like my heart's burping. That's the only way I can describe it.
really.
Yeah, and it does quicken, but it's just like it's really disorienting, and it makes me feel like I remember being on the road with and this was 3 years after my dad died, and for me, my dad is the trigger. Like, he died of Lou Gehrig's disease, and
Yeah,
so now I have this fear that every time my finger twitches, I'm like, ALS, I'm dying. Like, also not rational, but um, I was sitting in a restaurant in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with Ain Gordon, who's a director that we were working with, Emily Johnson, who's a choreographer. We're all at this like old steakhouse, like mafia steakhouse in Minneapolis, and everybody's great drinking, and I just remember sitting there feeling, and my heart was just like boo, boo, and I just got up and left. I didn't even tell anybody I was leaving. I did the old Irish exit and
yeah,
just left. Went back to my hotel room. Didn't even tell anybody. Like, that is not me. Like, but it was the only thing I could do
yeah,
to remedy the situation in that moment. And I think it's that fear. Like, yeah, again, like the panic wasn't the problem. It was the like, I don't ever want to have to get up and leave the room. What happens if that happens on stage?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm doing that during music for Pieces of Wood, like, I'm a dead man. That means I can't do my job. That means I can't pay my bills. Like, if I don't know when this is going to happen,
Yeah.
I should, I don't know what I should do, and that fear, it's performance anxiety. All of those things are part of it, but I can walk on stage and sight read at Carnegie Hall and have zero fear.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd prefer to do that than have to go to therapy and talk about my dad. Like that's how messed up my sort of internal trauma is. Is like, yeah, put up any music. I'll sight read Autumn Island at Carnegie Hall. I'll sight read Merlin. Put it up. I don't care. Like that's easier than anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, I totally know what you mean, like about not wanting it to happen, like not wanting to happen again, not having, like I, for some reason or another, for a number of years have fought taking medication,
Mm.
and I think it was because like I had some bad experiences with it, like very bad side effects,
Do you
and
mind? Are you? I mean, I listen. There's HIPAA laws and all that. I know everybody's comfort level with talking about medical records is different. And please, just if there's something you're not comfortable with, but like, I'm curious if like what medications were you on? If you're comfortable talking about them.
um, I was on a very long time ago. I was on. I started on Lexapro,
That's what I'm on right now.
and that worked really well for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also like an 18-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
so after a while, I was like, "Is this working?" So like they put me on a different medication, and um, I may have been on Zoloft after that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they put me on Wellbutrin, and Wellbutrin made me really sick.
I had Wellbutrin too. I've been on Lexapro since probably 2012. Like after that panic attack in Minneapolis, I called my doctor and she was like, I was like, my heart's burping, I'm dying. She's like, you're not dying. You're having one of the most common things that a human being can have, which is a pain. She was just like she was very nonchalant about it. I was like, baby girl, I'm over here dying in Minneapolis steakhouses, so
Yeah,
you need to take this a little more seriously. And but she put me on Lexapro initially. Um, that was a godsend. And then I went off of it. I had a good couple years, and I was just like, I don't want to be on medication if I don't have to be. I didn't have any side effects, but so with my psychiatrist, we went off of it for about 6 months, and that was when the Harvey Weinstein thing blew up. That's when Trump came on the scene, and like I just like society seemed to sort of blow up in a way that I hadn't. Maybe the Lexapro was sort of making me ignore some of the stuff in society, but like
yeah,
coupled with going off of it, all of the societal trauma happening at that particular moment, I bottomed out and realized that I think I'm addicted to Lexapro too. Like I don't think I can function, and so they put me on Wellbutrin a little bit, but that like made me feel like God, I had really bad dry mouth, and also just made me feel like I'm ready to go. And it's like I don't.
yeah,
That's a different version. I'd rather be a like sort of like borderline lethargic than like RPMs at like 3 million RPMs every second. And so
yeah.
I ended up just going off of Wellbutrin, and just Lexapro has been the sort of steady as she goes thing for me.
I didn't start again until I don't know November. Like that's how much I fought it. Like I had a serious panic attack in May,
Hmm.
and then I like waited
Hmm.
for 5 months, 6 months.
It's generally
Uh,
like, whenever you get a gangrenous tumor on your leg, it's generally good to
yeah,
wait 5 months before you see a doctor for some Neosporin.
I but like it got bad to the point where I had a panic attack while driving.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Um, and also it started happening daily where I would just be like sitting doing nothing.
Hmm.
Like I remember one of the last times before I saw a psychiatrist again, I had taken my car to get work done, and my wife drove me to pick up my car. I drove my car home. I'm sitting in the living room, and we were just talking about like what are we gonna have for dinner, and suddenly I'm having a panic attack,
Hmm.
and there was no reason. It's just like, okay, like this, I can't control this with wishful thinking. Like I have to, like my brain does not is not working how it's supposed to be.
Can I ask you, like, what? I mean, one of the things, what I've been asking myself, like, why am I so stubborn with some of this stuff? Like, why do I think if I've got like high cholesterol that a doctor can be like, you should work out and eat more vegetables, and be like, okay, like, but with my brain, like, it's who I am. Like my cholesterol isn't me.
Yeah,
My brain is me. That's how I talk. That's how I play. That's when I smile at somebody, some stranger in the audience, like during a show. Like, all of that is me. And the idea that, like, I feel like I got control over me. I can fix me. But I think admitting that I can't is actually one of the hardest things for me personally. Just to be able to be like, nope, I need medication, or nope, I need to go to therapy.
did did you ever have the maybe this is different for me because like I have my lifelong buddy depression hanging out with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that for some reason after a while, like I had times before I started on medication before that I said like I don't want to be on medication because it might take away my depression and anxiety, and maybe that's who I am.
Like it's some superpower that is,
Yeah,
yeah.
like maybe this is gonna change me too much, like my personality. I'm gonna be a different person. Like that's been a big thing for me is really realizing like no, it's not going to make me a different person. It's going to make me a healthy person or at least a
Mm-hmm.
healthier person. Like
Yeah.
cuz
Why do I treat, like, I had melanoma when I was in college, and so why do I treat? I don't look at every mole that has like a weird shape and dark coloration and be like, if I remove that mole, I might be less funny.
yeah,
uh, you know, People might look at the way I play Steve Reich's music differently if I take this mole off. It's like, those aren't related. Those have nothing
yeah,
to do with each other. But I mean, this is a discussion around, like, in the autism community. I know, like, like the idea that a mental health issue is something that needs cured, and
yeah,
I understand the argument for. I mean, I don't have any children. I don't have anybody close to me that has autism. Um, I know Adam Slewinski's son, Guille, does, and they just hearing him talk about this stuff has been really fascinating. But I did some work with the Cleveland Clinic when I was in college, with their applied behavior analysis program in autism, and I mean, this was 20 years ago, so the research is way different now. I mean, this was the
right.
time when everybody thought vaccines caused autism. This was like when Jenny McCarthy said the thing, and everybody blew up. Like, so, it's interesting. Like, I think talking to some families, they would say, if my son didn't have autism, like, autism isn't who my son is. Like,
Right.
my son, autism is keeping my son from coming out. But then I've also talked with Adam Selinsky, and I see it's like where there's a there's a way to nurture the specific situation in such that to use the things that you have as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. Like, there's that, you walk that line of ableism really quick, really quickly, in how we talk about mental health. And I'm in, like, I have my own personal experience that if I could get rid of I mean, listen, there's easily 1 month out of every year where I just am in bed. It's usually August. That's when nothing's happening, and I, like, school's not in session yet. Soci's just gotten done, so I've got the postpartum depression of, like,
Mm-hmm.
this month of crazy awesome work. And then I go home and no one cares about me. None of my students are like, you all are back to, like, your universities. No one is just like no one's going to be like, Josh, can we grab coffee? Like, no one's doing that anymore, and it feels like now nobody needs me. And so for August, I usually just lay in bed. But bro, if I could get that out of me, are you kidding me? I want 1 more month of productivity and, like, general
Yeah.
joy. Like, I don't want to be on the couch having that be the thing that makes me feel good, because that's it. When you're depressed, sleeping on the couch feels good. That's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a drug in and of itself. And so anyway, there's no question here, but I just like those are when you say your buddy depression, like that's a real thing, and I don't want that friend. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't make me more interesting, you know.
no, and I think that um, you know, I've talked to my wife about this a lot recently. That like now having friends or colleagues that are in their 20s,
Hmm.
um, and like seeing what they post on social media, I'm like, man, was I like that when I was that age? And then I realized, yes, I was. And
Well, Matt, you were, from what I remember you in 2013, you were a very quiet, polite, thoughtful person. I haven't seen you on social media other than your teaching stuff, but like you don't strike me as that version of a 20
there
year old.
there was a lot of like very much like I I don't know. I feel like this sums this up that like I was I was a smoker for like 5 years.
Hmm.
And I remember in grad school I decided I wasn't gonna smoke cigarettes anymore. I was gonna smoke a pipe.
Okay, so listen, guilty. There's I had never smoked cigarettes, but I do smoke cigars. Do you know Ayano Katoka by any chance? I was in school with her at Yale. She now teaches at UMass Amherst, and
Yeah.
she's like this 3 foot tall Japanese monster behind any percussion instrument. But she and I would smoke cigars, and I just thought I was like the coolest thing in the world, you know, smoking a cigar with my friend Ayano, you know. But it was like, what are we doing? Like it just feels good because you're like, I'm smoking a pipe. That's what
Yeah,
that's what
I'm cool.
that's what James Joyce did.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know. Smart people smoke pipes.
Yeah.
Well,
Trying to prove that I'm this cool dude.
well, Matt, I want to ask you just sort of a hypothetical here, and I got to say, like, seeing you sort of progress since 2013, and um, I see a lot of me in you in the way that I like. First of all, I feel like you and I are twins, so there's that. Like, if you squint at this screen, we kind of look. You can't tell who's where. Um, but I I hope people watch this and sort of get a sense of your honesty and your vulnerability. And I feel like you've always been someone for whom mental health hasn't been an excuse. It's always been a like this is part of the equation for me. And
Uh, I try.
well, you're just like, but this is I admire people who are like I have this big old problem and I'm trying to work through it. It's not your problem. It's mine. But
Yeah.
you got to let me work through it in my own way. And I appreciate that about you, Matt. And there's somebody that was coming to mind as you were talking, a guy named Andrew Solomon. Do you know who that is?
I don't think so.
He's a writer, lecturer. I ran into him on the TEDx circuit. So did a thing at the Met Museum, a TEDx thing, and he gave a lecture on mental health. And he is very forthright about his depression. And he talked a lot about the stigma around medication and stuff. And he sort of laid it out as a, like I was in a room. He went to a dentistry conference and he was in a room full of dentists, right? And they're all talking about the latest toothpaste, the latest this and that. And he was talking to somebody about like Lexapro or something. And they sort of made this flippant, well, like, oh, well, we don't know anything about mental health, and it's just it's just an experimental quack thing. And he's like, 100 years ago, we were brushing our teeth with like sticks or we were chewing on sticks because it was good for your gums. Like, gave people sugar cane because that's what's good. Like, he's like, Lexapro is like brushing my teeth in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, I wake up, and he's like, and if I find it doesn't clean my teeth, I'll take a new one. I'll take a different one. Like, you have different toothpastes. Like, why are we thinking of mental health any differently than we think of brushing our teeth? And that
Right.
includes things like psilocybin and mushrooms and LSD. Like, there's research around ketamine and all these other things that are like, you know, do you know Neil Brennan? He's a comedian, and he talks a lot about mental health. He wrote for the Chappelle Show. He's a white guy, and he talks about his depression. He did ayahuasca. I'm not here like advocating for any of that stuff because I haven't done it, but they talk a lot about like LSD and psilocybin as this, like, if you think of your brain as ski slopes, right? And like you wear them down. Like I am in the one ski slope I've been on for a while, you know, and then
Yeah.
and what these things do, which Lexapro doesn't do for me, but it basically is like putting a fresh coat of powder over all of the ski slopes. And so now you have a choice, or the choice is easier to go down a different one. And just like we are kind of in the wild west of all this stuff. Like there's words
Yeah.
we still don't know a lot, but I appreciate. I just wanted to say, like, I think those folks, people who talk openly about this and sort of are forthright about, I just appreciate it. I wanted to sort of ask you a hypothetical now moving
Yeah.
forward before we wrap up. I've already taken about 45 minutes of your time, and you probably have some sleep to catch up on, considering that you've been teaching since 1 in the morning. Um, what are your goals? Like knowing the last year, what are some things being a little bit more empowered with your own sort of career, and what are some things a year from now? Like I've been shocked that I get this notification on Facebook that's like 1 year ago today I was in Trinidad.
Yeah.
Like a year, so much is different about my life. For you, like what do you want to be different moving forward in the next year? What are some sort of things that you've seen that are like, yeah, I'm now free to do this and this is what I want to do, but I'm not doing it now.
I don't know. It's the thing that I've really uh realized is that, like I've said, the pandemic has been very bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody has any arguments about that. Like I became functionally unemployed, and my wife had COVID, and it's been awful. Um, the thing that it made me do, of just like, when I was working, um, even when days I had nothing booked, like I spent hours a day practicing, and I felt like people were always like, I had colleagues. I remember very clearly I met with one of them for dinner like after the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Um and he plays with one of the orchestras that I sub for, and he was like, "So what have you been up to?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been practicing like 6 hours a day every day." And I'm like, "What have you been up to?" And he's like, "Oh, I haven't played in like 4 months. Like I haven't played since the season ended."
Mm-hmm.
And that was like mind-boggling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm kind of like, well, I don't want to compare people's lives, but like I also feel like maybe he's more whole of a person than I was at that point.
I
Like,
don't know if that's a necessarily fair thing to assess of yourself, but I get what you're saying. I understand the sentiment.
like he didn't practice for like 4 months. He didn't touch sticks for 4 months, but like he, went golfing, and he spent time with his wife, and
Mm-hmm.
like did whatever. And I haven't had uh I realized during the pandemic, like I haven't had hobbies in like I don't know how long.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had interests outside of playing
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how long, because I always in my brain had this idea that if I if I let off the accelerator for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
like things would fall apart. And when I was forced to do that, I realized, like, one, things aren't going to fall apart, and two, like I've been missing out on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would spend like 2 weeks a month like away from home because I was like traveling in California or Oregon or
Mm-hmm.
northern Arizona or whatever. Um, where I wouldn't see my wife, I wouldn't see our pets, I wouldn't be able to like have dinner with
Yeah.
my wife. And like during the pandemic, like I I cook dinner every night, and we're able to like sit down and have dinner, and I'll sit on the couch and watch TV with my cat, or
Mm-hmm.
um, I can have interests outside of playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know what the ultimate. I think that if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, I would have said like my end goal with my life is like I'm gonna get a full time orchestral job, and I'm just gonna do that until I retire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that now I'm just kind of like I just want to enjoy the time I have. Like that's um that's something I kind of that's something I like about doing this is that like playing playing all the time and practicing all the time like I never walked away from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I would do a concert and I would come home and I would think about what happened, what went well, what went poorly. Um, I would like, okay, well, this is what I have to focus on when I practice next time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'll still do that when I play, but like when I'm doing this, like I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I, I teach, I finish teaching, I turn off my computer, I'm done until next time. Like
I,
in the I'll have to do prep for my classes before the
mm-hmm.
next time that I teach, but like I'm not stressing about my lesson with Danny this morning. Like, did I teach him those vowels correctly? Because like if I didn't, like I can fix it the next time I see him.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not I'm not stressed about it. And this is a long way around to your question.
It's all right.
But like I I think that in the future, at least for how I see it right now, like I don't think I'm gonna stop doing this. Like it happens when I'm not doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I spent weeks sometimes like I would have like weeks in my month where I didn't play at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like if I'm just doing this and I'm also playing, but not like forcing myself so hard to get every single gig, drive 27 hours through the
Mm-hmm.
night to
Mm-hmm.
go play for something, like I think that this has forced me to see like I was not living in a healthy way physically, mentally,
Mm-hmm.
anything. And I think that I need to find a better balance.
Well, that work life balance thing. I mean, it's I'm the wrong person to ask because my life for the last 16 years has been in airports and train stations and whatnot in my car. And this past year, I've been with my wife all but like 2 weeks of the last year. First time in our entire life, we've been together for 20 years. We've never been together that long.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff I don't want to give up of that. Like, I'm not, like, as touring picks back up, it's like, nope. Like, I want to be home more. I want to be with my family. I want to, I don't like being in my car if I can avoid it, and but I think for me the thing the thing you're sort of you don't need to have an answer now, but I think those like the idea that finding a hobby, something like that maybe interests outside of music. For me, it was podcasting. Like I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast obsessively. I was listening to MMA podcasts. I was listening to comedian podcasts, and I was like, I don't know if I had all the money in the world, I would just want to do that for a living. Like
Yeah.
I love playing drums. I love teaching with the So guys. I love all that stuff. But just to do this, so I was like, well, I can do that for free. I'm happy to lose money doing that. That's fun. That's what a hobby is. It's something you lose money doing.
Yeah.
And honest to God, bro, like when the pandemic happened and everybody's online being like, artists, we need you more now than ever. And I was like, nope, 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 nope. Because I've been dancing for you for 16 years and have been begging you to come to shows. And now that you're
Yeah.
locked in your living room and your Netflix account ran out, like, no, I'm going to go do podcasting. I'm not going to play for a month. There was a month I didn't touch a drum because
Yeah.
I just was like, no, this is my time, mine. I was super selfish right out of the gates. But to me, I think this is what doing this sort of thing makes when I do music that much more important to me because
Yeah.
my brain. I've gotten to work these muscles. And I think for you, like, just before we wrap up, like this VIP kit, like where can folks learn more about that program? Like, and if they've got children of their own who might, somebody watches this and wants their kid involved, like how can they find out more about it?
Well,
Or do
for
they need
that
to be
kid,
in Beijing?
if you want your kid to be involved, you'll probably be living in China. um,
Strange times, man.
but
People do weird things
yeah,
these days.
um, like that was uh, that's kind of the thing. Like this is a complete sidetrack, but like this is something I learned while I was starting to do this um and like doing my TOEFL training. Like I don't know that people realize that like we speak English obviously,
Hmm.
and we are in a very privileged position that there are more second language speakers of English than there are first.
Hmm.
Where because English is the lingua franca of business and science
Hmm.
and a bunch of other things. So in the United States, like we don't study a second language necessarily.
Yeah, not at all. I mean,
Um, in China, it's required by the Ministry of Education.
huh.
And that's kind of partially why this business is so big. There's tons of Chinese education companies that do things like this that
Hmm.
hook up um, native speakers with kids um, because it's very important. You have to take English exams to go to secondary school. You have to take
Hmm.
English
Hmm.
exams to get into college. You have to take English exams to graduate college because they want their students to be able to be competitive on the world stage. Whereas Americans, we sit in this privileged position of already speaking the language,
Hmm.
which is lingua franca.
Hmm.
Um, so it's an interesting thing. Um, I think that we should be learning Mandarin in school because it's like they have the two top languages are English and Mandarin.
Hmm.
If you learn Mandarin, then you could speak to probably half the people in the world.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
my mom was a French and Spanish teacher, and I wish that I would have learned. If I'd have gotten more fluent in Spanish, I think I. That's also a language where, like, if you go to Italy, Italian and Spanish are close enough where you can be like, you can get by,
yeah,
and obviously Latin America and Spain, like, there's just the amount of times I've been on a gig and been like, luz azul, like I need a blue light, like that's it, I have nothing else. um but no, that sort of, I don't know why I'm so flabbergasted by that stat that you gave, that there are more ESL speakers than there are original English speakers. Like, of course, like that makes total sense, but that's just, I don't know, yeah, indicative of English first native speakers are ignorance of how much English, I mean, English is the language that every airline pilot has to speak.
yeah, and
Like,
it's the whole concept of lingua franca that like it's a shared language
hmm.
where it's expected that like a businessman and man from Latin America and a businessman from Japan meet and they speak English instead of trying to transfer some other language.
Mm.
Um, it's it's like this neutral ground of linguistics, um, which has been an interesting idea to think about.
Well, as you progress in this career, I hope that we chat in 20 years and you are in a gold throne with those headphones on and you've built yourself a VIP kid palace and you are just you're like a rapper, you got chains all around you and you're just like, my name is Matt. Teacher Matt.
Why my closet isn't good enough?
With one of the, like, you'll have two of those dollar bill guns that just like shoot dollar bills into the air. No, your closet is lovely, man. There's no judgment on your charming closet.
you,
I'm
you
just, I want you to be able to upgrade. I want you to upgrade to your, your chalet, and your dollar bill guns eventually,
Yeah, I'll
So,
have a bigger display of sloths.
well, listen, man, I am very grateful for your time. I really enjoyed this, and my policy here is that the door's always open. So if there's something else that comes up, you want to chat, you're having a terrible day, and you just want to scream at somebody on Zoom, I'm here for you, bro. Okay.
All right.
Stay healthy and safe. Have a good day teaching, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
All right. See you, buddy.
Bye.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. This podcast is brought to you by Liquid Drum, liquiddrum.com down in Waco, Texas. My good friend Todd Meehan runs an amazing percussion company down there. Great merch, great content. Check him out, liquiddrum.com. Also, Kyle Dunleavy, dunleavypans.com, DUNLEAVY pans.com. Kyle Dunleavy makes and builds all the steel drums that I perform and teach on in So Percussion, as well as at NYU and Princeton. He's an amazing tuner, builder, just a really nice guy, very dependable. Check him out. If you are interested at all in steel pan advocacy, want to learn more about the goings-on in pan in Brooklyn, check out paninmotion.com. My good friend Kendall Williams, Jerry Guy, Trisha Guy, and Arisha John run an amazing organization called paninmotion.com. Check them out. And finally, Alejandre Mirage runs an amazing clothing apparel company in Brooklyn that is steel pan centric. You can check him out at mangochow, CHOW, clothing.com. I own a bunch of his shirts. They're amazing, very stylish, beautifully made. Check them out. mangochowclothing.com. Okay, hope you're well. Talk to you soon. Bye.